Mom, Dad's being weird again.
Luscious.
Honey,
So full.
it's just grass.
Oh, it's so much more than just grass. It's a healthier, greener, and more luscious lawn. Yours can be too.
Look at you.
With Kabursky Brothers Lawn Care.
Remember, no shoes on the lawn. Because you're so beautiful.
Call or click today.
Bacon, exciting to chew. Bacon Fest, we're expecting you. And love, Iowa bacon love.
Scott Dochterman, Chad Leistikow, together on one pod, talking Hawks and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere, legends and listeners, with you on this Thursday morning from the Channel Seed Studios, only on Iowa Everywhere, presented by GameDay Men's Health. I'm representing here today with the T-shirt. Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, along with Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. Scott, this is our 89th episode together. We're getting closer and closer to 100. I wonder when we'll hit 100. I guess it'll probably be 3 months or so, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll have a week or so in the middle where we are either off for the 4th or something like that, or having guests or something like that. But I imagine, probably July-ish.
July, yeah. Big Ten Media Days. Right? Yeah, there you go. Anyway, good stuff. We got a lot to get to tonight. We decided, Scott and I do a little bit of show prep. Not a ton, but we do a little. And we're going to divide tonight's show into 3 distinct parts. Part 2 will be a deeper dive on Iowa spring football. We really haven't done much on that, and it's nearing an end. The spring game here coming up in 10 days, 9 days actually. Part 3, we're going to actually focus on the Hawkeyes and the NFL draft, because the first round is 7 days away. And if you guys want to be primed for that conversation with your Hawkeye buddies, now is the time to do it, not on draft day. So Scott's our resident NFL draft expert, so I'm going to lean on him for most of this stuff. Maybe we'll lean on Dane Brugler as well of The Athletic, but that should be a lot of fun. We love talking NFL drafts, and maybe we can get some Bears talking there, sneak a little in there, maybe. But first off, Scott, we decided to start not on March Madness, but Portal Madness, as pretty much all the major Iowa sports are dealing with it right now. Basketball, football, even wrestling a little bit. We'll talk about basketball, football here, but I suppose we should start with the men, right?
Men's football?
Men's basketball. Let's start with men's basketball.
Oh, men's basketball. Okay, let me pull up men's basketball.
Well, whatever you want. We can do whatever.
Yeah, I mean, today was when the football portal opened up.
Well, let's go football then. Men's football. Yeah.
Men's football. They should really, they should have co-ed football, and then that way it's anyway, I'm not getting into that. Iowa right now, I have listed as with 31 portal entries since last year, and it's a higher end because of all the walk-ons that had to leave. But when I did the numbers on all the Big Ten as of today from last fall, 440 players have hit the portal since then, and by far the one that has the most, unfortunately, is Purdue with 54. That's what happens when you have a new coach and that everybody leaves. But Chad, what we've seen over the last week or so is, one player that I think we could agree to that kind of leaves a mark a little bit, and that's Brendan Sullivan. Yeah. Because he was a really unanimously loved by the team. He was a captain during their championship teams over the winter, a guy who they really respected, and somebody that I think if he would have stuck around, I could see him just wanting to get him in the game somehow. But, as we see, the numbers game is you're a quarterback. One quarterback usually plays, and that's going to be Mark Gronowski. I mean, you didn't bring him in to sit. So he went in the portal. I think that one's tough, but I think when you look at the rest of them, Khalil Tate today, you look at some of the walk-ons that have exited. I think those are I think everything else looks pretty much normal, although Joey Van Wetzinger was a little strange. But I think Brendan Sullivan is probably the one that they're going to miss, and this means that we're going to get a real big helping of Hank Brown next week.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Do you have any idea, like, where Sullivan can go, would go? I mean, it's not like, I don't know, like, Big Ten backup doesn't sound that bad to me, but maybe he just really wants to play. I mean, I don't know. It seems a little early to go. I get it, but it's not like there's a major job out there, is there?
Tennessee,
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, hey. He's going to a Big Ten school, right? Iamaleava?
Yeah, Iamaleava. Yep, Nico. Yeah. He's going to UCLA. He's going to UCLA.
How about that?
Yeah, that's consumed a little bit of my day here, but he's that is a different discussion altogether, and we can certainly talk about that. But I think in Brendan Sullivan's case is it now gives him options, and maybe it's a Power 5 school. There are several that maybe he would have an opportunity to compete in. I'm not so sure the Big Ten is one of them. They really most of the teams kind of have an idea. Although, and now you'll probably see Joey Aguiar, who went from Appalachian State to UCLA. I wouldn't be surprised if he decides to bolt and try to find his own opening too. But there's a lot of Group of 5 openings too, and for somebody like Brendan Sullivan, if you can, once the ripple effect of all these really good quarterbacks go somewhere else this spring, he might be able to find a job, and he's good enough where he'll start somewhere. And so I think this was one where you saw kind of a heartfelt goodbye from him and a heartfelt salute from his teammates and from the coaching staff and Tyler Barnes. And I think he'll be missed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would have been a really nice situation for Tim Lester, for Kirk Ferentz, for the Hawkeyes to have Sullivan as your backup because, if anything had happened to Gronowski, you felt pretty good about it, stepping right in, very similar skill sets. You don't have to change the offense really. But obviously, that's the way of the world right now. And the benefit is, Scott, that somebody's going to be number 2, and the competition right now in spring ball this summer, it's going to be pretty hot and heavy, I would think. I mean, we'll get an idea of how good Hank Brown is, I guess, in the spring game, but Jackson Stratton, how much has he improved? I mean, he did a pretty good job for very, very, very little practice with the team last year. I mean, he was not the scout team linebacker, by the way. Just to be clear, that narrative took on a life of its own. It was never true, but
that was Kyle Girardi. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That was. He was legitimately a defensive player, but
yeah.
But I'm interested to see what Stratton's done. I mean, I liked his arm. I liked his moxie. And then of course Jimmy Sullivan, heard really good things about him too. So it does create some interesting competition there. But you just hope that one of them emerges because you want to have an answer in 2026 too.
Absolutely. That's why you brought in Hank Brown. And you brought in, or Jimmy Sullivan arrived now. This gave them both a full spring with Iowa. Heck, Hank Brown got to work out a little bit during the bowl prep. And now they can work through the summer, the fall. Gronowski's there. And then it allows for that organic competition, and whether Jackson Stratton's another one who can maybe figure his way into it. A couple of they're going to go with, it looks like 2 quarterbacks in 26 in that class. And I wouldn't completely rule out Ryan Fitzgerald the way most of the time we do on walk-ons, because he is absolutely a winner at Loyola, and he's got a pretty good pedigree and toughness, and and I talked a little bit to Pat about him, and he kind of likes the opportunity that he's going to have there in Iowa.
Yeah.
So,
hey, let's not discount that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So go in, and hell, how many times do we see? I mean, look 8 miles away when you got Cam Miller from Solon going to North Dakota State. Was he better than anybody Iowa had in the last 5 years? Yes.
Of course. Yeah.
Mark
No
Gronowski, Mark Gronowski going from Naperville, Illinois,
Right.
to South Dakota State. He was better than Iowa had. So I think, I wouldn't discount somebody who had MAC offers and decided to come here and walk on, whatever that means these days, because he'll get paid probably the same as to take care of his schooling. So anyway, the quarterback situation to me is interesting now, and it kind of ramps up the I don't want to say pressure, but intensity a little bit for Hank Brown. Okay, now it's yours. Running with it. Jimmy Sullivan, the clock's ticking. You're going to be at worst number 3 probably, or you're going to be 4, and Jackson Stratton will beat you out. So I think you remove that buffer, and now let's see what the organic competition shows off.
Yeah, and good job by Tim Lester and Iowa to have the foresight to bring in both Brown and Gronowski. Obviously, because if you don't bring in Brown, maybe Sullivan leaves anyway. So then you're already down to Stratton again. Which I'm not discounting him completely, but you don't want to be in that spot already. So you got to give Iowa, Tyler Barnes, everybody credit for how they did work the quarterback portal this year. They did a good job. Let's talk about needs, Scott, in the portal as we talk about portal madness here. Do you put left tackle or do you put cornerback number 1? I think it's a good discussion here.
I'll say that they're 1A and 1B. I don't know which order because I haven't seen them this spring, and that's the main reason. I want to see, how do the corners compete against the receivers? How does left tackle compete against whether it's Herkett or any of the defensive linemen? Is Jack Dotzler a guy that they can? If you have to roll him out, and are they going to be okay? Or Trevor Lauk, or is it Bryce George from Ferris State? Come on down, and we're going to give you a pretty hefty paycheck to do it. I think that's kind of where they're at. He's coming in for a visit. I think he might be here by now. And he went to USC and Cal. So, if you're talking about a Division II guy, won a Division II national championship. He was a right tackle at Ferris State, and certainly fits the part and the profile. And I think now could he master enough of the technique between now and camp? Probably not, but he could probably be pretty effective. So Coy Cronk, was a guy who kind of jumped in until he got hurt and did that in 2020. So I would probably lean a little bit towards left tackle just because I think that's the unit that Iowa might be. I haven't said this for a long time, but that might be the unit that Iowa can win with in games as opposed to just relying on its defense.
Yeah, Bryce George, that's a name to watch for sure. Feel like you like Logan Jones. I guess we're getting into some football talk. I don't want to get too far ahead, but you love Logan Jones. You love Jennings Dunker. I feel great about Bo Stevens. I feel good about Cade Pieper, honestly, just how the good stuff we've heard about him. So really you're down to one spot that's a question mark, and it's a big one, left tackle. And I don't know, I guess we could Jennings is probably better to stay at right, I suppose, at this point. Kind of I don't know. I guess he could probably move to left. I'm sure they're going to say we work everywhere,
right.
But you'd like to just you'd like to keep everyone where they are. I feel like that's ideal.
I think if you like his potential on either side, and let's just say that they sign him because that's what we're playing right now.
Yeah.
He's got to come to a new place anyway. Mm-hmm. So you might as well just say, okay, we're gonna start you over on that side, even though you played right side before. Their quarterback just signed with Ole Miss, so this was a really good team, Ferris State. They won the Division II championship. They could be, we're looking at a Division II head coach a year ago who's done some nice things at mid-major and probably high major. So I think in this case, if you could grab somebody like that, just start them out there all summer long. This is your role. Because with Jennings, I mean, you could move him over, but it's almost like, why screw up a good thing? You've got maybe the
that's
best,
what I'm thinking. Yeah,
you got the best right tackle in college football. I mean, that's what he is. He graded out that way, and he is a machine as a blocker. Absolute Zamboni on the offensive line. And you want to keep that there because a lot of you run to the right a little bit more than you run to the left usually. So I think that's something you want to just play into that. Let's keep working the left tackle situation and kind of straighten it out there. And there's a couple other guys I think that can fit into a discussion somewhere. And I don't know how much more we want to get into the football part of things right now, but I'll say that, corner is also one that, when John Nestor hit the portal, that I think it ramped up the intensity probably for guys like Jalen Watson, for Alante Dean, who's a young guy, CJ Bell, and of course Rashad Godfrey. One of you needs to emerge as a number 3 because injuries happen, and then you're also looking at Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall and saying, you guys have got to take that step from being guys to being the guy.
Well, let's circle back to football in our second session here a little bit more, but got to talk about men's basketball because there's been a lot of news since our last show. Hawkeyes sign Trevin Urach from West Des Moines Valley, Mr. Basketball, flipped from Northern Iowa. Really, Tyler wrote a really good story about him and kind of like almost like a European style player. I mean, you're not comparing him to Jokic, but that's kind of his style. He just grew so much from freshman to senior that he was a guard for most of his time, and now he's a big guy. So he has that passing ability. So it's a really intriguing skill set. I think it's right up McCollum's alley in terms of developing a big. That's what he said on the podcast last week with us, and I know you had him on Iowa Live, so I'm interested to hear what maybe pearls of wisdom you obtained from him too before we get into the other transfer.
Yeah, a lot of it was, I would say, more surface level. It was really interesting, of course. We didn't glean as much probably as you did with your sit down because it was me and Chelsea Brown kind of going back and forth. But I think, one of the things I was trying to get more from him was, what pieces do you need to be successful? What are you looking for? Because the interesting dynamic I have now with Ben McCollum at Iowa right now is that you're looking at a program that, if this happened 10 years ago, next year you just write it off. It's a disaster. I remember Indiana when they had one scholarship player left after Kelvin Sampson's situation, and they went 1-17 the next year. But I think what you look at with the situation now is you can build it the way you want to build it. He's got his foundational pieces. Now you're cracking me up because you just read something and now you're big smiling and everything. So I'm like, did I say anything crazy or what? But he's got the foundation. All right.
No, it was a text I got. No worries. Okay. Unrelated. Okay.
I'm like, I didn't say anything that funny. But he's got his foundation pieces with Drake guys. Then, getting, Brendan Housen is a really big get for them in the portal, because they need a shooter. They want shooters. That's what he's looking for big time. And he, of course he's got one big guy now but he's a freshman. And we know in the Big Ten that I don't care who you are as a freshman. You could be a 5-star freshman, and it is a tough grind. Mm-hmm. So they're going to need a veteran there, but that also comes with quite the cost.
Right.
And so he also said another backup point guard, kind of, I think he told you that too, and more shooters and stuff. So, but I think they've got a pretty good start right now with what they're looking at I think they've got 7 scholarship guys now.
8
and
with
8.
Urok. Yep.
Oh, Urok, but who am I missing? Oh, Cooper Koch. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm looking at the portal right now. The
Yeah.
6 guys that they got. I have it on a spreadsheet, and I forgot to write down the one that's actually coming back. But
Yeah, and he's got the 4 years now. JR sent me that note whatever morning that was. They had just gotten the waiver from the Big Ten, and that's good news. And Koch is a shooter, so you throw Housen in there, you throw Koch in there. There's 2 shooters. From my conversation with McCollum, he feels good about this Isaiah Howard, the younger wing from Kansas City, I believe, and he's he played less frequently, but he was a freshman last year at Drake. He called him a Big Ten wing, so
yeah.
And he's got some size and defensive ability. He had a lot of steals. So they're getting there. They need more. Tanner Toulson, as we speak, has declared that he's down to 2 schools, Iowa and TCU. That would be a really nice pickup for the Hawkeyes. He was on a Utah Valley team that won a WAC championship. He averaged almost 14 points a game. He's a shooter. He's, I think, 6'5", and he would be another really nice pickup for the Hawkeyes. We'll see if it comes to fruition. I mean, there's been so many of these, especially on the women's side, which we'll get to in a second, where it's down to a couple schools and it goes the other way. So, yeah, you hate to get. I don't like to get too carried away with, hey, what if this guy comes? But that one looks decent, and he's older. He went on a Mormon mission before he even started at BYU, and then he ended up at Utah Valley. So he's played 2 years. He's got 2 to go. So interesting prospect there, an older kid. So that could be beneficial as well. I mean, this team actually has some, it's going to be pretty veteran with Sturts, Tavion Banks, Cale Combs, even though he's off the bench, is a veteran. Cam Magnow, as we know, has a couple, is a junior already. So, and I think, and then obviously Housen, he has 1 year. So they're going to be pretty veteran for a brand new team.
Yeah, and that's what the difference between this era and every other era before it is, that now, because he does have way more NIL than I think we all thought he would have. I mean, they pretty much said, here you go. And now it's not Indiana money. You're not Indiana rich, but I think you're able to go out and get what you kind of need. And that is a huge benefit to this program right now, that he's got his foundation pieces with the 5 guys from Drake, Cooper Koch. Now he's got a shooter in Brennan Housen. He's got the center from Valley, that was player of the year in the state. Now go out, you got to get another center. You got to get another shooter and probably a backup point guard or a guard. And although, if he's going to play 39.4 minutes a game, you don't need a backup guard.
I know, they don't.
Point guard, but this is the Big Ten.
I would think in the Big Ten every once in a while I'll get in foul trouble, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, this is the I think we always got to put that down with an asterisk. It's the Big Ten, and it may not be the best league, but it is the most physical league. And you got to be prepared for 20 games in that meat grinder of a conference. You've got to survive it, and you're going to have somebody else who can come in. Maybe one day he's got a head cold, something like that. So, but that to me is inspiring, because he knows what he's going after. He's self-aware in what he wants from his program, and the toughness element is something that's certainly part of it. And I thought he did a good job of kind of spelling that out for you on your podcast last week with him. And I like what I heard. And now it's just a matter of lining up some guys and seeing what happens.
Yeah. And there's, they should be getting a high school commit here any day now. Tate Sage he was committed to Drake. So that'll be 9.
Yeah.
And that that's not someone you want to count on right away, but they're building. Honestly, I know there's a lot of people out there kind of impatient, but I feel like it's going pretty well, honestly. I feel like, you got this best point guard in the country, made one of the, and you got some pieces around. I'm not declaring they're a tournament team just yet, but for firing your coach and, starting from scratch, I feel like it's going pretty well for Iowa basketball.
everybody left. Now they're able to bring back one guy, and yet they're bringing back. They're getting players who fit a certain role. They understand how to play in the system. They're going to be hungry. They're going to look at it the same way, whether they were at Drake or Wyoming before that or Northwest Missouri State. They're going to look at this and go, yeah, I mean, we want to compete in the Big Ten, and people don't think we can. So we're going to go do that. And so I think it's been great. I think I know, there's just an impatient element. I get it. And one of the things that Iowa fans have been blessed with all these years is that they never had one of these situations, not in football, not in basketball. And even last year with women's basketball, it was such a clean, handoff that nobody left. This is what happens to everybody. Or even teams that keep their coach. A lot of times it's 5 or 6 guys hit the portal and it's like, oh boy, here we go. You got to be patient and you got to figure it out. I mean, there are a lot of teams right now that are still going through it. On my chart here, I've got Maryland. They've got 7 new guys. 3 of them have come from Texas A&M, where Buzz Williams was, and so they're going through the same type of thing. I mean, Indiana, they've only got 4, and they lost, I think, every scholarship person went into the portal. I don't know if any of them left, but they're building it the same way. So it's, and then you've got teams like Duke's going to go through this, where everybody's going to declare for the draft, and then whether they pull out or not, in the next month is going to be hard to decide. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty here.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, but we should kind of reiterate that Bennett Sturts was going to go through the NBA draft process, and that's a big win that he's not doing that. So just add another one there, and I like the fact that they're, like you said, you made a great point there, Scott, that they're getting these hungry guys. They're all coming up. Ferentz loves this too, coming up a level for the most part. Hausen would be the one big, Power 5 to Power 5 transfer, but it's sometimes that's a good thing. Yeah. We saw it work at Drake last year, and let's see if it works at Iowa. Let's talk a little women's basketball real quick before we get back into football, which will be fun. Not going the greatest, not going as well, I guess, for the Iowa women. Tough stretch here. Not only losing Raina Harmon, which everyone's happy for her, obviously, but Aaliyah Guyton ends up at Illinois, and they really haven't replaced her. They had Alina. Let me get the. Alina Arnasalo from UCLA. Felt good about that one, and just didn't pan out. She picked North Carolina over Iowa. It was down to 2, and Iowa didn't get it done. We Dargan and I talked a lot about this in our Hawk Central podcast, if you want to get deeper into it. But, we were hearing that they're making good offers. It's just they're just not landing these players. And so it's just disappointing a little bit. Pressure's on a little bit more, I feel like, Scott. I mean, you got to do something here at point guard, because you really don't have one. You could play Addie Deal there, but that's not the ideal situation. She's more of a combo scoring guard. So anyway, they're kind of left filling some holes. They got to fill an assistant coach spot yet. So a lot on the to-do list here this spring for the women.
Yeah, that part of it is they'll figure out their coach situation. That won't be an issue. I know they just hired somebody for director of player development, I think it was, just on Wednesday afternoon, and then ops. I'm sorry, but then there's point guard. You're swimming in a different pool than the men are right now. I mean, the men are. There's 2,000 players right now in the men. I mean, with the women, it's pretty narrow, and even though there are fewer players, but there are fewer impact players. I'll say that maybe that's a difference in the games, where I think with women that there are elite players, and we saw them, we covered them, and we've covered teams that had them against the team we cover, and then but then you get farther down, the mid and low majors, there aren't nearly as many players who can just come right in and play right away, unlike maybe with men's basketball, like Utah Valley, for instance. You know, somebody like that could come to the Big Ten and have in men and basketball compete right away. And women, well, maybe one player could from that league. You know, otherwise they're bench material and stuff. And that Iowa needs a starter. They don't need depth. They need a starter. And that's been unfortunate. You know, they went after the UCLA girl from Finland, I think it was. And so maybe it's just she felt more comfortable in blue and white and went to Carolina because of the flag of Finland or something. I don't know. But, you know, then there was the other one from USC that they didn't get a chance at. And then there was one from somewhere else out east that ended up in Miami, you know. So there's, you know, they're battling, but one of these days they're going to have to snag one. And when they do, then you look at the team and they're great. But that's a big piece that they need going forward, and they need it. This is one where maybe a little bit more pressure should be applied because the pool is drying up very quickly.
GameDay Men's Health. Give them a shout out here at the midpoint of our show. Man, it's fun. I ran 3.5 miles yesterday and felt so good. I'm back out after the little bit of a hip injury, but GameDay Men's Health has been there for me every step of the way with our testosterone replacement therapy treatment. It helps your mood. It helps your energy. I was still working out as much as I could while I was waiting for my hip to get better, and so I was back out there still running pretty good pace. And so, you know, it's give a shout out to GameDay Men's Health. They can help your energy, your mood, your performance on and off the field. Get connected with GameDay Men's Health for a private, no obligation, free consultation at GameDayMen'sHealth.com or one of the locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. You were telling me you just got done with a workout thanks to your latest tee shot. So we're both doing pretty well.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it immensely. It's been really good and healthy and helpful for me, and you know, looking forward to continuing this relationship that's been very much mutually beneficial. I know the GameDay Men's Health place in North Liberty, which is only a couple blocks away from me. You know, they say, "Wow, people must actually listen to your podcast." You know, I have some of the people giving a shot, giving shots. They do. It's like, yeah, they do, because they're like, we got people coming in all the time. Yeah, I heard about this on the podcast. So
it's awesome.
So that's the way it goes. That's mutually beneficial relationship.
It's awesome. I hope you guys are having a good experience as well. I know you are from the people I've heard from. So it's great. It's a great partnership. Honestly, it's meant, you know, a lot of people just listening to a sports pod, getting help with their life. I think it's an amazing. It's like the most perfect sponsorship. So we really appreciate GameDay Men's Health on so many levels. Let's get back into football, Scott. We haven't gotten to dig into spring football that much, and we're starting to build up the interviews. Last week, after our show aired, we got to talk to QB1 Mark Gronowski. What were your impressions of the South Dakota State transfer?
I guess first of all, and it's interesting at this point because he hasn't done anything other than kind of take air reps. You know, he stands 15 yards behind the center, and then, okay, I got to turn this way and I got to think this way and stuff. But he carries himself with an aura of really of confidence, but not arrogance, at least in a public setting. Now, on the field, if he's got that kind of swagger, then let it flow, let it rip. But at least you got I got the feel that he believes in himself. He knows he can do the job. He's comfortable in this setting, very personable, which again, some people say, well, it doesn't matter if they're nice to me or you. And I know that, but I think it comes across well to the other people because they're not seeing me or you with the camera. They're seeing the person. And if then they engage that way. So I think in his case, he just seems to be the perfect guy for this team right now. Even though he can't practice, or he's ahead of schedule, as he said, he's doing light throwing, but he, you know, come June, he's all ready to go. And I think this team will be raring behind him.
Yeah, and the fact that the recovery is going really well is a great sign. I mean, especially when you're talking about a throwing shoulder. So still have to see it, you know, to feel better about it. We won't get to see that at the spring game next Saturday. But it's 10:45 start, right? Just so that for the fans out there that want to attend, 10:45 next Saturday at Kinnick Stadium, April 26th for the spring game. If you want to see Hank Brown light it up, see all those receivers, receiver soup, I guess. Got a lot of them. But no, yeah, Gronowski, I was impressed too. I mean, I was just on Big Ten Sirius on Wednesday, and Anthony Herron was asking about, well, didn't we have these same feelings about Cade McNamara, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I get it. Like, and I want to tell you for sure it's different. I mean, I feel like it's going to be, but still, you understand, an injured quarterback in the spring. It's happened now the last 3 years that the transfer quarterback was injured in the spring. But this is different, I think. I mean, it's not a knee. It is shoulder, but I was impressed with how he carried himself. Again, I know some of you out there that doesn't mean much, but it just everything I'd heard about him before he got here was just like, wow, like he is like an unbelievable guy, like an unbelievable leader. Like people just love him. And I mean, there was some of that with Cade, I felt like, but I felt like it was also, looking back, it was more maybe a little bit more inflated reputation. I mean, he wasn't the reason Michigan won.
It was it was a lot of wishful thinking.
Yeah. Right.
But, and it's fair to evaluate it, and if people come back to us, whether it's Anthony Herron, or it's people on the street or listen to this podcast and think, well, yeah, you guys said the same thing about Cade, and that's true to an extent because he was, but when you look at the situation, he was a guy that was part of a Big Ten championship team. He had good statistics, and Iowa's passing game was really bad. When he came in, and he was injured. He was coming off a knee surgery. But I think the one difference here is, Chad, that I try to point out, when you look at Cade, there was legitimately questions. Maybe we overshadowed it, but was he the reason why Michigan went and won the Big Ten championship, beat the hell out of Iowa that game, and then went to the playoff? Or was he part of the ride? And he was clearly part of the ride. I mean, they had the Joe Moore winning team. They had two NFL running backs in Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins. They had Eric All was a pretty good tight end. It's too bad he didn't get to play much more with Iowa. Receivers, the defense was unbelievable with Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. I mean, they had players all over the place. I mean, they've had 20 some odd draft picks, that have come off that team. Whether they're starters or backups. So he was along for the ride, and J.J. McCarthy just wasn't quite ready to take the whole thing on like he did the next year. Mark Gronowski was the team at South Dakota State. Now, Tucker Kraft was a really good player, and they had other players that were, this team would have went to a bowl game for sure if it had been in the Mountain West, but he was the reason why they won those games. He was the reason why when they got into tough moments that they won. He had 93 touchdowns. He's won the National Player of the Year. And then last year he fought through a slightly torn labrum that he decided to get fixed, and fought through all that pain and got to the semifinals where they lost a shootout against their arch rival, North Dakota State, and Cam Miller, who afterwards just said, I hate him. I thought that was great personally, but Mark Gronowski, and then you meet him and you're like, okay, it's authentic. It's not, and it's Midwestern, even that he's from the Naperville area, and he's humble enough. He went to South Dakota State. It's different level going from Michigan to Iowa and then South Dakota State to Iowa. So there's a lot there vibe wise that you got to like. And yes, he's coming off surgery on his shoulder, and you do have to be semi-skeptical of that. But if you're cynical about it, then it's like you're never going to be happy. You're never even going to have hopes for your team. You're just going to be constantly negative Nelly, and nobody likes those people. I don't.
So we're starting to build up the interviews. Like I said, we'll get some more later today, actually on Thursday, with Iowa players, and then we get the coordinators next Thursday, so that'll be fun. And then we get the cover of the game. So there's a lot to come here, but just kind of what you've learned this spring thus far. I know you're doing a lot of national stuff, so I don't want to put you on the spot too much. But any areas of particular interest that have come up, whether it's a good thing, or a good feel or a bad feel for this team.
I'm pretty bullish on Iowa, even with a schedule that is pretty challenging. I mean, if they get to 10-2, they are legitimately should be involved in that conversation for a playoff spot. But I looking ahead a little bit, and I know we'll talk probably more next week about what's coming up on the weekend, but I want to see the linebackers. I think that's something that they're going to need good play from, because I think back in, I think it was 18 or 19. I think it was 18 when 19, whatever. That they had, they were kind of a letdown for a little bit at linebacker. Yeah, 19. And Christian Welch was pretty good, and then he got hurt, and so, against Penn State, and then it was a struggle, and they lost some close games, and they had some really good opportunities, and I think in 18 too, a little bit there as well after Josie Jewell left, and so I want to see, can Jaden Harrell, I'm not asking him to be Higgins, or certainly not Jack Campbell or anybody like that, but can he be Seth Benson? Can he be solid? Can he be good? Can Carson Shire be injury free? Because he's been praised since day one, and he was a COVID recruit. he didn't have anything. He was like a 2-star and was going to go to Northern Iowa, and then ends up at Iowa from Iowa Falls, and we've been hearing about this over and over, and it's kind of like Jeff Tarpinian way back in the day. So I think let's see it. Let's have it. Jackson Rexroth's solid. But now you got to play more. And so they don't have the abundance of defensive backs that they did last year to cover up for that. If they say their third linebacker isn't as good, they can't just say, well, we're just going to run cash the rest of the way. They're going to have to a lot of the time, but they're also going to have to play slam ball too. And so I also want to see the younger guys, Buffington, Weiskopf, Reese, Cooney and Goucher, the two guys coming in who are really good. So, and then I'm overlooking Van Kekerix, who came out and talked last week, and Jaden Montgomery, who's well liked and respected. So I think there's a lot of guys. I just want to see them compete, because I think this offensive line is really good. I talked to someone the other day who's on the defensive side and watches every practice, and he's like, they are legitimately giving us a hard time every day. It's the offense. Okay. So the offense is about even with the defense, which we've never seen before. There have been one day that they're really good in camp or something, but we've never seen it where day in, day out, it's an equal. And they're at that point. So again, then it becomes the chicken or the egg. Is it because the offense is so much better, or is it the defense isn't as good? But I want to see the linebackers and how they compete in the run game, how they go against these blocks, because that's going to dictate wins and losses.
Mm-hmm. Another guy that talked last week was Jonah Pace. We'll feel okay about that. Transfer from Central Michigan, but again, that's another one of those where is he Jack Heflin or not Jack? Not Jack Heflin. Feel great about Aaron Graves, obviously. Feel pretty good about Ethan Herkett, Max Llewellyn, Brian Allen once he gets back from the injury. Is it Kenneth Merriweather, whoever's going to be the fourth defensive end. I mean, they could probably ideally use another edge rusher, but I just don't know if they have that luxury right now. So I think corner, left tackle, maybe linebacker. I don't know. Do you go get a linebacker or not? If you can.
If it falls in your lap, but
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't feel like you knew.
When you've got the
two guys waited their turn, yeah.
Right. When you've got guys like Harrell and Shire who've been around for a long time, and Rexroth too, for that man. Those three have been up there. And then you've got this plethora of really talented redshirt freshmen and freshmen. Run with them. Let them do their thing. You've got one of the best defensive coaches in the country in Seth Wallace that's running that group. He's coached 3 first-team All-Americans at that position, and none of them were a 4-star. In fact, one was a 2. So I think you just let him run with it. And then at defensive end, let's not forget Yosei Epineza is coming in, and he's got a chance to rotate just like AJ did. And I will reserve judgment on the second defensive tackle spot. I don't know that it'll be easy to replace Y.A. Black, because Y.A. took up blocks. He took up space. He moved piles. Now, he didn't make tackles, but Jay Higgins did. Now, can these guys do that too? Can they be, as you said, Jack Heflin? Can they be, Sam Brinks? Can they be guys that do their job? Jeremiah Pittman, Jonah Pace, and it doesn't matter who's starting because they're both going to play a ton of snaps. But I think they're going to need Bryce Hawthorne. They might need a couple of the walk-ons to really be able to eat some snaps. Gaffney and Hubert. And maybe one of the younger guys, one of the redshirt freshmen. So that to me is going to be interesting, because I don't know that they want to, with the teams they play, you got to go with 4 instead of 3 defensive tackles. You just don't. You're just going to need it. Penn State and Oregon are on your schedule. You got to go to USC. You got to play Wisconsin, which they're doing 42 push-ups every day now. So
that's right. Yeah, thanks to Brendan Sullivan.
Yeah, I know. The 4th time that they actually scored 40 points in a game last year, not the first.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Good discussion there. Circus Sports, I hope you guys took my advice last week and took no on a hole-in-one at the Masters. It was a hit. Hit the bet. It actually moved up to Andrew Downs tailed me, and I think he got plus 150 or plus 155 on that bet. So that's the great thing about Circus Sports app is they most of the books will just say, will there be a hole-in-one? But Circus said, will there be a hole-in-one, yes or no? That's one of the advantages of Circus Sports. So took the no, went against the grain, got the win. It's Circus Sports Iowa app is designed by players for players, inspired by years for those the creators have spent that on both sides of the sports book, and that's why a lot of their wish lists for what a sports book should be has come to life in Circus Sports. You can include future bets in your parlays, deposit and withdraw funds remotely. Download the Circus Sports Iowa app today for the best and sharpest odds anywhere. Visit circusports.com/Iowa and be watching Iowa Everywhere here over the next month or so for more on Circus Sports and Circa Resort and Casino. From all of our, not just us, but all the other shows as well here on Iowa Everywhere, even though we do have the best show. NFL Draft, Scott, this is going to be a lot on you here. How many Hawkeyes get picked next week in the 3-day draft? Initially, I thought there was going to be a huge class. Now I'm not as sure. So tell me what you think.
I think Dane is my North Star, Dane Brugler, who has the Beast that just came out. Was like it's more than 500 pages of evaluation, and I every year I'm blown away, and then the next year gets bigger and bigger, and I'm always wondering why an NFL team doesn't just call him and make him their director of player personnel, because he's so good at his evaluations. But he has 5 Iowa players selected. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say at least 6. He didn't have Connor Colby selected, where, the number.
That's surprising.
Yeah. The other one that I kind of have always leaned on is Our Lads Scouting Services. Dan Shanka lives in Cedar Rapids, but he used to be a scout for Washington and Philadelphia and Kansas City, and really, knowledgeable, and the staff that works with him. I mean, and he has Connor as a 6th rounder. So I think, and the one that Dane has is he has Caleb Johnson going with the first pick in the 3rd round to the Giants. And he has YA in the 5th round to the Eagles. Sebastian Castro, 6th round to the Bengals. And then Jay Higgins, 7th round to the Giants as well. And then Luke Lachey going to the Chiefs in the 7th round. And I think all 5 of them get selected. And I think that's probably the order. Maybe I think they'll get a little bit more. You know, one of the things you run into with guys like, let's take Higgins, for instance. We know what kind of person he is. His tape is his tape. His measurables and what he did at the Underwear Olympics is whatever it is. He's a guy that if you're wanting a cultural change, if you want somebody to impact your team, you draft that guy. I was that way about Jack Campbell too. 2 years ago, and Detroit was that team that wanted somebody like him. I want the team captain. I want somebody who's going to make plays, but somebody who's going to hold everybody accountable, make everybody around him better. And that's, to me, what Jay Higgins will do. So if you're, I don't know, Cleveland, let's say, and you're in the 6th round or 5th round even, and you're like, you know what, we could take our chances on this guy who's a height, weight, speed guy. He was good, honorable mention, all whatever conference. Or we could take the guy who's super productive, whose character is off the charts, who's going to hold everybody accountable, and maybe he's not going to go to the Pro Bowl, but he's going to start for us for the next 8 years. I think that's the guy, and that's I think teams whip so often on players like that, and Iowa always seems to be the both beneficiary and the detriment in some ways, because everybody knows what you're going to get with an Iowa player. You know, which is productive, tough, physical. They're going to go and they're going to compete and they're going to make your team. The thing that this is the NFL problem, and this is why people get their asses fired, is because then they start to go, yeah, but he's already reached his height. You know, he's not going to get any better. And we wanted guys who get better. Well, they had 4 years at an SEC school. They had 4 years at whatever school. They never got much better. They have a lot of potential. But potential gets your ass fired. You know, Jay Higgins comes in and he only makes 125 tackles for you and makes everybody around him go, man, this is my dude. That's what you get. And so I'll think that Jay goes higher than the 7th round.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, the more and more I go through we're both huge NFL fans, and just the more and more you watch the NFL, it's like it seems like very rarely do those measurable guys, like the ones that haven't produced. I mean, it just seems like those guys just don't really pan out how you want. Like I was listening to a podcast the other day about someone who was really high on this defense. I can't remember who it was, what school it was, but like a defensive tackle. It's got all these measurables. It was from one of the big, that might have been Georgia. He's got like all these measurables, but he's at like 1 sack over like 2 seasons. And I'm like, well, why would you take him then? You know, like why is he considered so high? And it's just like, give me production, man. Give me production. And I think that's what the Lions really did well with, is their drafts over the last few years. And I don't know, it's just, and I think in frustration for us, the Bears, I think, have gone the other way on that. A lot of times they've gone for like the potential, like you said, instead of the real thing. And it just, it just seems backwards, but that's just kind of the way it is. Speaking of maybe a paradigm shift, though, like running back, it's kind of like in fashion again, right? To take running backs, sort of. So maybe does that improve Caleb Johnson's stock? I mean, in the past, think about David Montgomery. He was a 3rd rounder way back when, and he was like a tremendous college back. So I feel like, Caleb's. I think he came out at the right time, even though it's a really deep class.
Yeah, he did. I mean, there's no better time than now. I mean, if he would have stuck around, that would have been ridiculous, I think, in his case. But, to kind of go back to what you were saying, guys like Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens that the Bears picked a defensive tackle.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, they were guys that they're 5 stars. So you look at that talent and you're like, wow, maybe we could coach them better. And then you look and they're like, well, they're good, I suppose, but there's a reason why they didn't do that. But sorry for ruining the train here on this Caleb Johnson's discussion. But, it's interesting because Dane has him as number 44 player, but he has him going 65 overall. Running back is a weird prediction because you've got, he has him as his third, but, he has him still going in round 3. And it's because they're undervalued. But now that the NFL decided, well, we're all going to play 2 deep safety, now they're more valued. And we saw that with Saquon Barkley this year, and we're going to see that a little bit as it turns, that teams are just going to be like, we're still going to defend against the pass. Caleb has had a ton of visits. He just wrapped up Chicago as his last one. And he's been in New York, I think Cleveland, and some other places too. And he's going to go somewhere, good. Denver loves him. I do know that's a team that's been in on him for a long time. But, there are probably 2 guys I would put above him. Genty for sure is he's out of this world, and Omarion Hampton from North Carolina as a pro prospect. I had to pick between them for the All-American team last year, and I went with Caleb. I thought Caleb had a better season, but I also saw Hampton play Minnesota too, and it was like, yeah, this guy's good. And so if you're the Bears at 39 or 41 and you get one of those 2, clap. They're starters. They're starters for a long time. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll go somewhere in the second round.
Second, okay.
Yeah. I don't think he gets to the third. I think he goes to the second. Dallas, maybe.
No other Iowa guys on day 2, probably.
I doubt it.
I thought initially, way back when, I figured Lachey, maybe even Colby would be in these ranges, but I guess not.
I think there are 2 that have a shot at it, and I think they aren't those guys. I think it's YA and it's Castro.
Yeah,
because YA is really undervalued. You look at his, he's had the slowest 40 time in Indianapolis. He didn't have a lot of statistics and stuff, but kind of like we were talking about how Ben McCullum is putting together his roster. NFL teams do that too, where they decide we're going to, like in a 3-4, it's like the 5 tech isn't necessarily designed to go get the quarterback. If he can do it, great. But his design is push the pocket, push the tackle back, take up maybe 2 blockers, so then it frees up your edge off, rushing or your blitz. And YA is the type of guy who's probably a second or third down back. But I got a quote here I could probably share, I suppose, from an offensive line coach in the NFL, or not in the NFL, the Big Ten, I should say. And let me kind of read it here.
Okay.
I may have to cut a word, but it's really good. It's instrumental about YA.
Yeah, go ahead.
He's like, we walked out of the tunnel and we were like, who the F is that grown man? He dominated us. I think he played a prototypical 3-tech in an over front. I loved how he played. He kicks ass. Harmon and Graham, Derek Harmon, who played for Oregon, and Mason Graham from Michigan, were a problem on third downs. He's not, but I bet he starts in the NFL early, and whoever gets him will be very happy with him.
Wow.
So I think when you're in the 3rd round and you're like, we're kind of soft up front, we just need a guy who can just crush 2 people. If you make a tackle, great, but I don't care. Richard Seymour went to the Hall of Fame because he was an elite player. He didn't really do things like that. I think YA can do that. And I think Castro might be the other. I don't see him dropping below the 4th round. I just think that he's got too much potential as a safety. He's played multiple positions. He's covered the slot and tight ends and hits like a freight train. He's going to immediately enhance your special teams. I think he could be a Pro Bowl special teams guy personally. So I think he'd be that. And then Luke is kind of in I think a little bit tough just because, his injury. He didn't have great numbers last year coming back from his injury, but he's a better blocker than people realize, and if he can kind of maybe have some good coaching with him for receiving, he's going to be somebody who makes a team for a long time.
Yeah, it almost makes you think if he had come out a year earlier, when you look back, he might have gone higher, even with the injury. I don't know, just because of the potential there.
Yeah.
So it's too bad he didn't produce last year, and that's not all his fault. I mean, the injury plus quarterback play, plus Caleb Johnson being the workhorse that limited what he could do. So a lot of guys that could have been maybe in the draft, maybe in the drafted range, but doesn't sound like they're going to be, like a Mason Richmond, Jamari Harris. That's a little bit of a surprise if you think about, him kind of cutting it short last year. I know that was like, I shouldn't say no, but it was like there was a tweet that went out not long before he made that decision about, this guy could be a first rounder. And then I remember it wasn't like a major reputable guy or anything, but it was just like, you just wonder what got in his head when he made the decision exactly. And kind of looks like maybe he won't get picked. I mean, could he get picked?
Yeah, he could get picked. And I think Mason's another one that's kind of in that same situation where once you get into the late 6th round, into the 7th, it just depends, like Mason's from Kansas City. He had a visit with the Chiefs. He had a good pro day. I think he's got a potential to, it's like, we like the local guy. Let's go ahead and get him, or, Jamari, hey, he's a cornerback. He was productive for a long time. 7th round, what, let's get him in here and see what he can do. It's not like he's a bad guy, he's just, but, I did talk to a scout and wouldn't really talk about his situation in particular, but said it's not a good look when players opt out before the end of their season unless they're injured. Now, if they opt in bowl game, that doesn't matter anymore, and I wrote that story and it posts on Thursday morning, but yeah, I think they both can be drafted. They both will be on NFL rosters by the end of that Saturday, one way or the other. I hope Mason can be that way because I think he's going to be a guard in the NFL. They'll kick him inside, but that's his spot. And I do think Connor will get drafted too. I mean, I think both. Scott
Dochterman says 6.
I say
six Hawkeyes get drafted. All right.
Yeah, and then Nick Jackson will get signed.
Yeah.
There are others that, Tyler Ellsbury had a really good combine or a good pro day, and I think he'll get signed.
I do too.
Then there's Craig and Quinn Schulte. Oh, Luke Elkin will probably get signed.
Yeah, he'll make a roster.
Yeah,
I bet.
Yeah, he's every bit as good as Casey Kreider was at Iowa anyway.
Is there any way he could get drafted? Elkin? You see long snappers drafted here and there.
Yeah, once in a while. I mean, I wouldn't predict it, but I would say that, again...
I'm sure no one's mocking it, but that wouldn't surprise me.
When you get into the 7th round, it's such a different animal. I tell people that all the time, that, take the Vikings. I think they have 4 picks in this draft. And I don't know their last pick, but, they're probably looking at, we need to hit with these guys. We need these guys to make our roster. So they're not going to take somebody whose character they're not sure about, or somebody who, maybe they've been injured and they're like, well, but then again, if you're a different team and you had I think Cleveland has a ton of picks, like 10 or something like that. And you get into the 7th round and you're like, well, we're not sure here. We don't really need the safe pick that we're going to have to cut anyway. Why, let's say Mason Richmond, that he's a guy that if you need a backup lineman, he's your guy. Hey, stick with it. But if you need, somebody, it's like we're going to swing for the fences, and if it doesn't work out, so what? We'll cut him. that's the height, weight, speed guy, character guy, something like that. That's what you pick in the 7th round if you got a lot of picks.
Good show. We'll talk next week. We'll preview the spring game next week and whatever. Probably some portal developments.
Yeah.
So plenty to talk about next week, and maybe a little bit more like first round NFL or Caleb Johnson talk. See what the buzz is there. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow saying so long. Thank you for tuning in from the Channel C studios to legends and listeners only on Iowa Everywhere.